That question, of course, I'm going to go back to the area of my research, which is in self-determined learning, or pedagogy. And what we do in self-determined learning is we're moving students to a place where they're making decisions about their learning, where they're understanding better not just what they've learned and to reflect upon what they've learned, but to reflect upon how they've actually learned it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get them to really think about, you know, how do I learn? And become more self-determined learners, to become more critical thinkers. And so I think when I think about a methodology, self-determined learning comes to mind because it makes learners really responsible for their learning. And so what can happen, though, is that students just aren't ready for that. They're more in a pedagogical environment, the talk and talk, being told what it is that they should know, without thinking for themselves. You know, what is it that I need to know? There was just Princeton, a bunch of professors from Princeton, Yale, Harvard. They just published a letter to their students a few weeks ago at the beginning of the semester, and really the central thesis of this letter was think for yourself. You know, how do we get to this point where our students aren't thinking for themselves? You know, why do we have to write a letter to them saying, think for yourself, don't just accept what's being said and done by your professors? Well, I think that's because we've used an old style of pedagogy, and if you go back to some of the stuff that Freire has written about pedagogy of the oppressed, this is happening to some degree in many of our institutions, where we as professors are saying, this is what you need to learn, this is how you need to learn it, and then tell me what you learned, rather than really building critical thinking skills and getting students to think for themselves. And so I think that is going to be something that we really need to focus upon. But as I said, the issue is our students are still in a pedagogical environment. They're still thinking, this is how I learn. So we need to move them along what Rose Lucan called a pedagogy, andragogy, pedagogy continuum, a PAH continuum. We need to move them from being just consumers of knowledge to being self-directed learners, and then to becoming self-determined learners. And this, of course, is going to require scaffolding. It's going to require moderation and support from the instructor to help students move out of their comfort zones and into a place where they can actually become self-determined learners. So I think that is you know, a really important area, a methodology that needs to be really done within the class.